Hello everyone, I welcome you all for the next module on equivalence. Equivalence is the most dynamic and important aspect in the field of translation. So before enter into this idea of equivalence, I wish to reread the idea of Eugene NIDA. In one of our previous lectures, we have discussed the idea. So I wish to read this idea once again for you. According to Eugene NIDA, while translating a text, it is always felt that no two languages are identical either in meanings given to the corresponding symbols or in the way in which such symbols are arranged in phrases and sentences. Since there can be no absolute correspondence between two languages, there can be no fully exact translations. Hence, there is always a problem of equivalence in translations. I wish to repeat once again. Hence, there is always a problem of equivalence in translations. So now it's the time, and we should discuss like a debate, and many debates of a fully exact translation or equivalence is the most prevalent one in the field of even today. Since all translations are inevitably reader oriented or listener oriented, equivalence becomes very important. Ultimately, the source language text should make sense for the target language reader or listener. And for that, the translator has to take into account all or more of the factors that we have already discussed. Here, I wish to draw your attention to share the fact of Anton Popovich's who identifies 4 types of equivalence in translation. The very 4 ideas are linguistic equivalence, paradigmatic equivalence, stylistic equivalence and textual equivalence. What is this linguistic equivalence? I think the similarity between words of the source language and target language, and this will obviously occur in word for word translation. So the second type of equivalence is paradigmatic equivalence, and here you have a similarity between grammatical components. The best example is Dravidian languages. And the third type of equivalence is stylistic equivalence. Here, similarity in the meaning or impact of the expressed or text or message. And the final equivalence is called textual or syntagmatic equivalence. Here also there is a similarity in the structure and the form of the text. So when it comes to idioms and metaphors, so the translator will have to aim for stylistic equivalence, where according to Popovich there is a functional equivalence of elements in both original and translation. Here also we have NIDA's contribution for the field equivalence in translation. What he suggests that he categorizes equivalence in 2, that is formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence. The very idea of formal equivalence is there is a complete correspondence between the two texts in terms of structure and content, and it will try to convey as much above source language text is possible. Here, a faithful translation would be characterized by formal equivalence, and dynamic equivalence aims at creating a similar impact as the source text on its readers, or to recreate a similar relationship between the reader and, or we could say, listener and the text. So both forms of equivalence have their pros and cons, and are irrelevant according to the context of translation. Thank you.